employees that are available by the relevant authorities now responsible. But within the ADFC, will help countries when the Israel was and don't have needs. Many African countries do not even have sovereign credit rating, and they cannot afford the cost of issuing global bonds in New York or London. But if you have ADFC, you can do it on individuals in other parts of the world. There's other institutions in Africa that have their own experience of doing it. Now, with the funds raised, they will be invested. Again, you can see the focus on Africa. So funds are raised from the diaspora, friends of the diaspora, including impact investors. Now it comes to Africa. How is it received now? The portfolio managers would invest in African financial institutions, those that have established track record of investing in areas of major development that impact at the profit. We will not know them, but they exist. So the specialist portfolio investment will forward invest the money generated from the diaspora into this fund. And we form a very fund for the business and different parts of the fund. We may give guidance to them in terms of what areas of priority we want our money to be invested in. We may give guidance on what's called positive and negative screen. To say the negative screen, which is to say the money is do not invest in this, do not invest in this, do not invest in this. We may say do not invest in tobacco. They say do not invest in arms manufacturing, things like that. It's negative screen. And we may give positive screen and say invest in areas like this, like pharmaceuticals or farming for particular. But specialist technicians would be giving this guidance as form of portfolio management. Then the profit raised, the profits generated from this investment, these would come back to ADFC and the profits would be put aside in an endowment fund. We will put aside in the endowment fund. That endowment fund will keep growing. And the profits that we receive from different investment transactions is then given to the development trust. That development trust can, on the one hand, give out grants to diaspora civil society organizations in Africa. On one hand, the other hand, it can give out soft loans for patient investment in different countries. But by that time, there is money to be distributed. But the original capital remains, and this would be the first continental endowment fund. Many of the big grant institutions that we hear of, from Carnegie, Ford Foundation, all of them are endowment funds. Endowed some of them over 100 years ago. That original capital is invested, and it is the income from those investments that is distributed as grants. Each corporation bring money from the diaspora and friends of the diaspora, invested in very impactful ventures. The income of it goes to the endowment fund. It generates more money to distribute stockholders. I do have a slide as Nelly. If you can kindly share one slide, I think it will explain this particular before. Regarding the actual structure, I'm not going to the structure. The proposal is that we will do 3-day multilateral message. Many of these institutions I mentioned, they get affected by or they created another for feedback. All of it is one well-known structure that is for the 3 days I am pleased that my lab and skill were very, very experienced and in fact working on one of the top institutes of finance and institutions from Israel that
as a treaty-based structure, the member states, the African member states that sign up to the treaty, that they will be developed. In a way, there will be no financial opening, nominal financial requirement. The biggest commitment is the commitment of the ADFC. And the proposal based on other structures in Africa is that there should be 10 signatories, 10 ministers to sign on and 2 will be part of it, and 6 of them write their signature for the ADFC to start operating. Of course, it means the charter and airport is privileged, that it goes that sign of as member states, one of them. Sometimes when we put this out there, in fact, the competition of the member states as to who will be it. That means there's other privileges and exemptions they give to which means we will use institution. Now, I did mention that diaspora portfolio investment is based about portfolio investment in general in Africa is the least developed part of the different kinds of finance. And diaspora portfolio investment is virtually nothing about it. But if we come to what we hear about diaspora bonds, certain things we like Ethiopia has the Ethiopia Diaspora Trust Fund. That is more on the philanthropy than portfolio investment, because people make a donation to the fund and the trustees decide how to disburse it. In Rwanda, you have the Agaciro Fund. Again, people make donations from it, but instead of being disbursed, it is being used as a form of sovereign wealth fund, whereby it's famous. But still, technically, it's on the portfolio, it's on the philanthropy, in that you're giving in the money for no return. If you come to the bond, what we know is diaspora bonds that have been held. We have in Ghana, as I said, Ethiopia, Kenya, Nigeria. These are the countries we would say have undergone standard bond issuance. And as I said, in 2017, when we Nigeria, that is the only maybe people in the world who know about this case, because some critics say that actually it was not truly a diaspora bond, because many subscribers were not generally Nigerian subscribers in portfolio. The details of all of the subscribers, I think the debt management office here have not published asking that people please. Just to say that reinforce the point that there's far more rhetoric bonds than reality. That doesn't in any way question the validity of it. But what it allows us to, is the fact that we do need to reorient this structure within South Africa. I'll take 2 more minutes to wrap up. One is to say that now that we are in the implementation phase, I think we are having problems showing vision. The diagram. But effectively, how the innovative finance mechanism move forward is this. You would have 3 parts to it. In the UK here, if you give money to a registered charity that does work in Africa, that registered charity will claim back to give you 25% of whatever you give them. I give £100 to them, they get 125. Why does the government give 25 pounds more? Because as a matter of policy, one, they want to encourage people. Second, they want to encourage in general water that charity stores. But if you give that money to the school that the charity is supporting directly in Africa, there will be no tax benefit. So to benefit from this sort of tax relief, yet is this innovative financing mechanism. Where countries like the UK, the US, and other countries that host diaspora would give a match funding based on the amount of remittances that country. Because all of the remittances they do country people have paid tax on it. And the government, as a matter of public policy, has to support people who support Africa through their remittances, and also people who use formal means of remittances. We cannot claim it if it doesn't go through that. So that's one major part of integrated finance. And the discussions have been held, and some countries have expressed interest. Second, the money transfer operators themselves. Some have even formed their own foundation because they make money and they are living out of diaspora, so they want to give back. So they set up foundations making money there, but they can also, if they want to donate or contribute towards the ADFC. That's the second point. The third, and in my view, more exciting way, is the one that I call micro contribution. All the money transfer organizations who we now use for money transfer, we will ask them to put a question or a tick box on their app. So every time you are sending money, $100 or £100, it would ask you whether you want to give $1, £1 to the fund. So these micro contributions of $1, £1 every transaction also gets to the pool. And that would be the beginning fund. That would be the beginning fund for ADFC. You can see why the member states will sign it. We don't need to put capital. The capital relates to the financing. I will pause here. There's a bit more that I want to talk about, but I think it may come up out of the discussion, people that started here. Thank you so much for your kindness.
Thank you too, Jibril. I think we should give to you. All these issues, and indeed, yes, I'm sure that we have scope to start in the Q&A. And the diagram that you mentioned could be sent to people who are making it for this event. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Ndidi Njoku. Ndidi is the chair of the African Foundation for Development, AFO, and director of markets for development. Ndidi is a finance and development specialist with focus on the role of diaspora, migration, enterprise development, and regulatory infrastructure. She has participated in specialist discussions and negotiations, such as the UN, the World Bank, the International Organization of Securities Commissions, European Securities and Markets, European Commission, and European Council. So, Ndidi, you have the floor as one of the respondents to Jibril's.
Thank you so much. Can you all hear me? So first of all, I wanted to thank Professor David Liu and LSE, as well as the African Union Commission and Jibril Fowl, as well as CEDO and my fellow panelists for being here, because I think, as you all know, this is a very topical subject. There is as you can tell in the world, there's a growing emphasis with regards to African unity, African diaspora. There was a return of the Ghanaian government last year, and it's a continuing kind of program. It's kind of called for the wider African diaspora to come back to Ghana, and it's coming back to Ghana in that, but also to obtain their nationality as well. So this is created a lot of emphasis with regards to what the potential of the global African diaspora. And as I think John mentioned, the definition of the African diaspora in the AU is quite wide. So it's definitely kind of first generations Africans, but it's also those people who have the intrinsic belief in Africa and the development of Africa and are contributing towards that fact as well. So what I would love is kind of an interactive kind of session, and I'm sure a lot of people within the audience and online have interest, but also particular expertise within different aspects of maybe what Jibril is talking, but also what the panelists were going to be speaking about also. So I'll pause there and just say, provide a brief background with regards to what I do. As you hear, I have very different hats. Today, I'm here for a board, the African Foundation for Development, and also my own company, which is Small Markets for Development, primarily for the African Foundation for Development. And that's close to a 30-year diaspora organisation. I'll just pause there, because we don't really hear that very often, 30 years. And as we've heard previously, what the board has been doing is trying to kind of push the emphasis with regards to the potential, and it's focused on the potential of the African diaspora to contribute towards development in the continent. So the mission statement of the board is to enhance and to expand the contributions of the African diaspora. And that's kind of exercising both their political, their intellectual and their financial capability towards progress in different countries in Africa. So at board, we have a base here in London, and we're in Shoreditch, but we also have offices in Belgium and also on the ground in Ghana and in Nigeria. And we work with a number of different partners to facilitate different types of enterprise development. So it's, and I'll kind of speak a little bit about that and then relate it also to the ADFC. So in a sense, the board has kind of four main kind of programs. One is to do with kind of enterprise and employment. So we have a scheme there called the African Business Club. And what is that about? That's about, it's focused at this moment on West Africa. And we're in a number of different countries such as Benin, Nigeria, Senegal. And what they're doing is working with entrepreneurs to increase their kind of business capability, to take their businesses to the next level, to expand their networks. And also where there is kind of migration kind of benefits, where we can upskill different entrepreneurs and they have a specific skill set that will attract companies or investment within the UK or the global society. What we try to do is to link those together. So we're working with the Swiss Development Corporation to kind of and other kind of funders to just really kind of enhance the African entrepreneurship within the continent of Africa. And what we notice over there is so some of the funds that we're talking about is in that particular scheme is under £1 million. And what we kind of notice is there is kind of it's very hard to obtain funding for £1 million and less for small, what is typically considered a small investment. And I think definitely with regards to the ADFC and the development of the Retail Development Trust, being able to, and I'm just using a board as an example, to be able to utilise funds that will be able to provide specific expertise to reduce that kind of investment gap with that particular type of investment will be kind of game-changing. It will allow kind of NGOs such as the board to grow and to kind of enhance entrepreneurs within the continent, but also to provide that kind of transnational kind of approach to entrepreneurship as well. We also have another kind of area which is all about kind of investments, and here we're kind of working with, we have an investments kind of team in the UK. And this one is slightly above. So this is 1 million and above. And what we're trying to do is to facilitate we're focused on two particular countries. I'll talk about one country, it's in Ghana. And what we're trying to do is to facilitate or to create an African diaspora bond for Ghana. And we're working with the government of Ghana to look at, okay, what are the issues on the ground. So one of the things that they talked about is housing. So what we're trying to do is to create an African or a Ghanaian diaspora bond to facilitate and to create housing opportunities in Ghana. And what we focus on is kind of student accommodation. And these type of things, we can see that it directly relates to the approach of facilitating African diaspora investment for particular investment opportunities on the ground. And as I mentioned, with regards to the report, we have a lot of pioneering and innovating kind of ways of creating or facilitating enterprise or entrepreneurship, both within the UK and or African diaspora members within the UK and on the ground. So I would just like to say that our report most definitely supports a continental approach to innovative diaspora finance. When it comes to the research that, or the lack of research that Jibril has mentioned with regards to DDI and also portfolio investment, this is an area that we definitely have to make sure that we can plug. And there are definitely a number of different institutions, both here in the UK, but also within Africa, that can undertake this research. As Jibril mentioned, when the report first started off, what we were trying to do was, first of all, highlight the comments on the African diaspora, let alone the remittances. A lot of people kind of saw the issue of migration as a negative aspect. And what we were trying to do as a board is say, well, you know, there is a potential with regards to the African diaspora, both in terms of skills transformation, in terms of finance, but in terms of the network that it contributes towards both in the continent of Africa, but also in the global kind of north and south. So, you know, I'll stop there. There's a number of different things that I can kind of mention, and I don't want to, but I just want to kind of emphasize that it's important that we have, that the ADFC is finally in its implementation phase. And I believe that, you know, a board, as well as a number of other kind of diaspora organizations and institutions will support ADFC in that instance.
Great. Thank you for that. And I think that was really very important to give a sense of the diaspora on the ground and how it is itself organized to take advantage of this benefit of the African Union. And talking about the African Union, I think it's now time to connect to Addis Ababa and to bring online Angela Adai, who is our next speaker. And just a brief introduction. Angela is the acting head of the Diaspora Division and Citizens and Diaspora section of the African Union Commission in Addis Ababa. She's a development expert with 13 years of experience in diaspora engagement and migration and involvement at both national and continental levels. So over to you, Angela, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and warmest greetings to you all from the headquarters of the African Union Commission. It pleases us warmly for us to be present here, and I use this opportunity to thank you all for making it to this public lecture to listen in to a diaspora legacy project that is dear to the African Union on innovative finance, and then succinctly the African Diaspora Finance Corporation, as Jibril has already enumerated. Now, the African Union has always had diaspora as paramount in most of the decisions that they took, since the diaspora helped really during they were a very defining feature when the OAU, or the erstwhile Organization of African Unity, was transiting into the African Union, because they saw to it that heads of state noticed that the diaspora played a key role, and without their participation, there was no way they would have been able to achieve their first two objectives, which had to do with apartheid, bringing an end to apartheid, and then colonialism. In view of that, they decided to transit into a more people-centered union, hence the African Union. So now this can be seen, the diaspora can be felt and seen with the amendment protocol of the African Union, Protocol 3Q, which invites actually the performance or the contribution of the diaspora into the affairs of the union. CEDAW has the mandate to actually encourage, motivate, and then streamline all activities of non-state actors into the policies and plans of the African Union. And as part of the 2012 Global African Diaspora Summit, heads of state saw to it that as part of the 5 legacy projects that they laid on board or they proposed, one key thing was for an Africa advocating and then ensuring that there is the need for us to have an operational African diaspora investment fund. So Professor Jibril, who I highly commend, has done a great deal of work on this over the years, and then seen to it that it's gotten the report or the strategic plan has gotten the endorsements that it requires. As of February this year, where the Executive Council actually has adopted it. In addition to the framework, making sure that it is operational, I must say that GK Partners as well supported us in another request that was made by the Executive Council, which is to see to it that further studies around business operations and other things were actionalized. That they did for us as well, pro bono. Now, I would say briefly that stakeholder institutions has been actually strengthened as a result of this. You could see this as a result of our cooperation with a diaspora partner like Jibril, and then the African Union has been able to actually move this forward. Even though the migration policy framework for Africa has stipulated that it should have been in operation as of 2022, it's still in process, and we are trying to see to it that this works. I see this as a great opportunity, or this platform as a great opportunity for us to be able to launch into the deep, since all our manner of stakeholders are here, for us to actually, I'll encourage us all to put all hands on deck into assisting the continent by ensuring that we put our heads of state and government put in place the relevant diaspora-friendly and financial frameworks for us to be able to yield the full benefits of the ADFC towards an Africa which should be a strong, united, resilient, and influential global player and partner with a bigger role in world affairs. Thank you so much. Thank you for your attention.
Yes, thank you very much, Angela, for this. Very clear that this is a very important initiative of the African Union, and so thank you for giving us this perspective. Now we're going to cross the Atlantic, I believe, to have our next speaker to come join us, and that is Almaz Naguer, who is joining from California. Almaz is the founder of the African Diaspora Network and was named as one of the 100 outstanding Silicon Valley women of influence for her work in social innovation. In 2010, Almaz founded the African Diaspora Network to inform and engage Africans in diaspora and facilitate direct collaboration with social entrepreneurs, innovators, business leaders to invest and improve the lives of people on the continent. She also served on the UN Economic Commission for Africa, High-Level Commission on Migration from 2017 to 2019, and was an executive in residence at the Lucas School of Business in San Jose State University from 2018 to 2019. So, Almaz, with that brief introduction, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me. Yes, I am in California. Jibril, thank you, all of you, for this conversation. As you've mentioned, we are in Silicon Valley. Our goal has been since 12 years ago, now almost 13. How do we mobilize the African diaspora and Friends of Africa to the development of the continent? But what I love about what the Africa Union is doing in collaboration with Jibril and others on the ADFC is now we're moving beyond remittances. The diaspora is generous, one of the most generous philanthropists in so many ways. We have been able to give to our families and friends when we are asked. The question now is, what do we do to scale up investment back into the continent? I live in a country where this is actually a reality, because the diasporas in the United States, for example, have been able to put so much into the economy in the amount of $55.1 billion in 2015. And that's the economic value of the immigrants in the United States, according to the New American Economy that was published a while ago. But I think that is just a fraction of what the U.S. gets from immigrants, because we are just a portion of that amazing immigrant community in the U.S. And as Africans from the diaspora, we're so good at giving remittances and all, but what we're doing now at ADN is how do we engage our diaspora? And I have to say, and I'm very proud, that even our organization is supported by diasporans. And what we're trying to do, and we started this actually with Jibril at the UN General Assembly, with Angela. They were speaking about this, the same subject that we're talking about right now, to try to really engage the diaspora into the ADFC and see how we can build a relationship, build trust, because we are also known for not trusting everything. So what we want to do is make sure that the diaspora understands what this platform is, and then how do we support, not just an idea, but to make it into a reality. To do that, we started a roadshow, which began, as I said, at the UN General Assembly in last September. And then we took that same conversation where we flew actually Jibril to Washington, D.C. to participate with us at the State Department and White House collaborative effort that ADN was an integral part of the ALS, to speak about the conversation on beyond remittances. And Jibril did give exactly what he talked to earlier. And I think that's very, very helpful for people to know. What we're trying to do at ADN is we don't want to just talk, we want to see this to fruition. And to do that, we have learned over the years that we must engage the diaspora. We need to take each other seriously and not for granted. So what we're doing is we're taking this again back to the African Diaspora Investment Symposium, which is going to be just coming up in March in Silicon Valley at the Computer History Museum. We've been doing this for the last 7 years. This is the 8th annual African Diaspora Investment Symposium that brings Africans and Friends of Africa from around the world to the Valley. And so at least for a couple of days, the Silicon Valley becomes the African Valley. And I'm very, very proud of that. We hope some of you will join us. But the idea is to continue this conversation. We take it from conversation into action, but we also want to make sure that we are engaging the community. And I want to emphasize on the community. When we talk about the community, we started with the contemporary diaspora, or the new immigrants like myself. I am originally from Eritrea. I came here as a foreign student, and so many others are similar like mine, or other reasons that they migrate. We will continue to migrate, but the question is, what kind of platform do we have to bring our community together? And I think the idea that we can ask the diaspora to do whatever we want them, whether it's from our own home country or any agency, it won't go anywhere, because what we want is, or what we have heard over and over from our network is, we need to know, what are you asking us to do? And then how do you want us to do? And how do we trust that the platform that you're saying is going to be the right platform for us? And that's exactly the reason why we are working with Jibril early on, and Angela, to ensure the community understands what this platform is, so that when the implementation, we're doing this on our own simply because we have been working on this for a long time. And why do we have to reinvent the wheel when we know that there is already such a platform in the works? So what we've decided to do is support this effort and then try to make sure that we, oh, there's an echo. Can somebody lock it? Okay.
Yeah.
There's an echo on my end. So I think what we want to do is that instead of we reinventing the wheel and do what Jibril and the African Union through Angela and others are doing, instead of reinventing the wheel, we want to support this and then see how do we engage the diaspora so that we could use this platform to actually really invest, scale into scalable projects and opportunities in the continent, regardless of which country that is, provided that there is an opportunity for us to invest, whether it is going to be a tangible investment or some kind of other investment opportunities. The diaspora is really, really ready to give, ready to invest, and we're looking forward to working with you. I do look forward to having many of you to join us at the symposium. If not, in other ways, we will be able to collaborate. We just got one last news. We just got accepted. Our Beyond Remittances conversation is being accepted by the School World Forum, which is going to happen at Oxford in April to have an ecosystem event. And so I look forward to hosting that. We've been doing this for so many years. I've been going to Oxford to just speak about the diaspora engagement, but happy that today they did accept our proposal to do a session on Beyond Remittances at the event, which brings about 1,000 people from around the world. So we will continue to hone onto this until we see some kind of action, hopefully sooner than later. And I will end by saying this: I'm so happy to see at least one of the 5 pillars of the AU proposal in 2012 come to fruition, because I was in Sandton, South Africa, when the first Global African Diaspora Summit was held. So I think this is wonderful. I look forward to working with all of you, and I appreciate the opportunity to share what we are doing, and hopefully we'll support in any way we can. Thank you.
For this, and I think note has been taken of the event in April. Also, I think I should just mention that if anyone did not pick it up, that last month during the US Africa Summit, the Biden administration appointed a special envoy for African diaspora affairs in the US to sort of spearhead work through the diaspora on finance, on investment, trade, and so on. So, just to take note of that, there is now in the Biden administration a focal person for diaspora affairs. Tim, you've been very patient, but I guess also you have been listening attentively, and sure you found all that's been said so far very interesting. So I'd like to give you the floor after briefly introducing you. And Tim Nylander is the founder of GP3 Institute. He's a lawyer and development advisor. Tim has more than 50 years of experience in the design and operation of development institutions and facilities, including governance design for projects involving multiple countries and private sector parties. He is a consultant at the multilateral level with multilateral plans, regional and global programs, African Union institutions, Sustainable Energy Initiative, SADC, regional and disaster preparedness facilities in the Caribbean, in Central America and the Pacific. And he established GP3 as an institute to provide a network of experts globally that will provide technical assistance for projects focused on achieving the SDGs. So I think Tim, you also key person who can make all of this happen.
Thank you, David, and good evening, everyone. I would say that the ADFC is right in front of a wave That's not just an analogy because I also live down the road from the other colleague in Southern California, and you get used to sitting on your surfboard waiting for a big wave to come from time to time. Here, in this case, over the last 20 years or so, been a kind of wave building globally for finding new ways of facilitating blended finance, public-private cooperation, involving the collaboration of multiple countries and private sector, either for some aspect of innovation or for an aspect of finance. This particular initiative, the ADFC, is sitting in front of a massive wave. You heard some of the numbers, but what's at stake here is finding a suitable vehicle or surfboard to pick up on that energy that's been building right across the globe. What's pushing? What is the driver of this type of wave? Partly is that philanthropy in its older form, which was seeking to solve for more immediate deprivation and need, has been shifted. In my own work with the Gates Foundation some years ago, it became clear that some philanthropists began to think of their funding as seedlings, which should serve as a kind of base to crowd in or to attract other types of finance. Because ultimately, without some type of financially sustainable approach to what might be a systemic need, perhaps in the case of the ADFC looking for ways to build SME and other types of activities across the continent, then philanthropy sees itself as the bottom layer, let's say, of that stack of finance that's been concessional, economic, and other development aspects of countries from the diaspora. So one of the colleagues on the phone of this webinar is a gentleman named Justice Ben Kyoko. He and I have tag team projects for about 12 years now. He was formerly the general counsel of African Union. Now he's vice president of the African Court of Human Rights. In 2012, about the year that this initiative was being announced, I was able to work with Ben and others to build out a public-private finance institution for disaster response. So-called disaster response or disaster risk finance institution, which started, like this project, with an endorsement from the African Union. That was critical. Our in this capacity is now 10 years old. That was critical because the political buy-in of countries behind this, and now there are 35 member states, institution, necessary to facilitate transnational cooperation across the borders without too much interference, let's say, from what we would normally understand to the national legal systems, which are important to sovereignty, important to statehood, but sometimes, in the context of larger supranational development objectives, those national legal systems can get in the way. Without a treaty-based organization, without political buy-in, institutional attempts at this type of cooperation can be difficult to put together. Justice Kira and I worked on 4 or 5 projects over the last 10 or so years. Some that never come to fruition. Because there's not enough political will or enough political buy-in at that top level to facilitate what needs to be a regional or a continental initiative in order to gain scale, or to have potential to really. What's different in the last 10 years or so about this notion of a treaty-based organization is a blend both of public and private finance, which is what's at stake here, and a blend in the governance structures of the actors. Treaty-based organizations are traditionally and have been for 150 years, formed only by countries, member states only as members, no non-state actors or other, let's say, in the government structure or in the operation structure. Increasingly, the pent-up energy is about blending public and private or state and non-state participants and funding in an institutional form of vehicle that allows you to catch that wave. If you can imagine trying to pull together a project like this with multiple contracts and arrangements amongst all the players, rather than, or in contrast to a vehicle which holds those actors and maybe holds that within finance and focuses it in order to channel the activity. You have a very different type of vehicle, which, from my perspective, and I work on these projects across Southeast Asia, Africa, South America, regions, that need of unlocking the collaboration between public and private sector with a development purpose. In other words, ultimately a public benefit or ultimately public purposes, targets the sustainable development goals, other types of development objectives. To get to that, you need to put everybody together in a vehicle that's fit for purpose. Pick up on that way and take that. So it's not enough anymore purely for philanthropy to do the work. Sometimes in a philanthropic program, if you're successful, then within a generation, you have to write a check 4 or 5 times that size to maybe continue to provide funding for educational programs or global health programs. Without kind of financially sustainable ecosystem that ultimately begins to pick up and become a systemic program, then philanthropy can't go. And then probably that's part of the message here is ultimately, and it's not purely Western capitalist type of approach, but ultimately the program still has to sustain within the cultural and economic context of the country or the region where it is. So it does need lots of cost there.
Institutions, political guide is absolutely essential, and then also a credible funding pathway. And I think Jibril applied that part very well in his presentation, also key. And then, of course, the organization of the Diaspora itself, of the framework, which is where he comes in as and others. Well, we've come to the end of the presentations. It's about just coming up to 7:30. We were supposed at this point to be having your networking and all that, but I think all of our appetites, intellectual appetites, have been whetted by all that we're here. So what I suggest is that we go on for another 20, 25 minutes or so, perhaps until about just before 8 o'clock. And take the questions, answers, and have a good conversation around these issues. So the floor is open. We could begin with people in the room who would like to yes, make interventions. Just say who you are, what you are related to, etc., and ask your question. And if you want to direct it to someone specifically, either online, or Alvaz online, or TV, or Jibril here, it's useful.
Then, my name is I'm from Niamey, far from I work for a US investment bank here in London, and also we have also MBA and business administration management. I have a question in regards to agricultural funding. So I would like to understand the influence national governments need to have in order to implement a specific product development in the South. So let's say that I have an idea or have an initiative to implement to some country where I need the government to approve or to block any activities. Another question is, what are the main areas for investment? Institution is targeting environment. Or maybe ask the professor. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. Maybe we could take another one. Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for the talk. I just one, it's relatively to Jerry and Asim. Question regards to remittances as a bigger engagement part of village mentioned a few times. So just on a primary basis, I was curious as to what constitutes all kinds of remittances and how that figure is actually derived. So for instance, someone sending money for consumption going on an agriculture, but someone sending money is supported by government. So it's curious how that 85 numbers like
Anyone else in the room? Yeah. Okay.
Hello, my name is Kobe, so essentially notice. And this is actually very great to have this model. Two questions actually. So the first one is, I think this is very interesting for us to see that actually. What I would like to know though is what are the biggest threats in regards to making this successful, and also some of the ways that could be taken to try and push this to happen, because I think that it's very successful. And the second one is that I think Professor Jimbo mentioned that there's a competition regarding frequency have the equities. I just wanted to use the thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I think we could take these three. I think mostly give you a reason for me. And perhaps also Angela want to come in. But Tim, Didi, and Almaz, if you want to comment, please, you're welcome to do so.
Regarding the first question about the interest from national governments, most African countries do not have a whole range of portfolio investment schemes. The ones that have do very well. We think of Kenya, to an extent Nigeria. We are finding diaspora finances, diaspora savings going into those products. But all the evidence is anecdotal. And currently we support Sierra Leone. Even there, we found anecdotal information that members of the diaspora are investing in portfolio products in the local treasury bills. But as mentioned, there's no structured way of measuring. But the principle is to have a pluralist approach. So the commercial institutions who have their products, that should be marketed out. If you go to Kenya now, almost all of the commercial banks have diaspora liaison directors, because they're going out selling those products to the diaspora. So the countries like Ghana and Guinea-Bissau were way down, and even Sierra Leone were way down in terms of developing those products. But the good thing about having new forms of innovation is you create, and I keep using the word, an ecology. As soon as you bring a movement, a new form of finance, other players, it's the nature of business, other players will come to the market and do things with them. So that's what we anticipate that will happen. So it doesn't mean that the government have to necessarily approve, but all portfolio products must be regulated by the government. So that level of regulation will happen, and that's it. And if the government has their own product, that's again market. People will choose whether to buy or not. And the governments do have portfolio products, that is their bonds and their treasury bills. And the perception is that African government perhaps are not very good financial management. I can tell you something, African governments never default their debt. This is so true that sometimes it's not necessarily good, because they would sooner pay off the debt and then they would sooner cut off social benefits than not pay off the debt, because they need to do that. But in a positive way, it means they don't default, especially if it's local currency products. Regarding which are the priority areas one can put this forward investment, Probably we've been using the phrase resilience industries. But this is a decision that will be left to the portfolio finance managers who would make the different guidance. They would make a decision based on their day-to-day professional knowledge of how to hit the strategic goals whilst giving the financial report. But the guidance we put in the report is resilience industries, things like food production, things like pharmaceuticals, things like IT. And regarding the question on what constitutes the big number of 85 billion that was into Africa, these are monies that we know for sure that it has come into Africa. Because these are the ones that have come through formal means. They've gone through the money transfer companies or they've gone through banks. So they've been counted out from the country of origin and they're counted in the country of receipt because they are regulated, counted. What is it spent on? Studies have confirmed that over 85% of this is spent on food, subsistence, education, health. Sometimes people dismiss this simply because it's of a consumptive nature. Sometimes people dismiss it. But remember, these are the SDGs. So the money, remittances are funding SDGs. And from a financial point of view, since it's contributed locally, they're contributing to the multiplier effect. So even if the money was spent on parties, it still has an economic benefit. Because someone has to pay for the alcohol and the balloons and the music and all that. And you create a multiplier effect. But we know that the bulk of it is on the primary sustainable development goal. As the questioner alluded, part of it does go into investment. But we can only guess because no country has studied it diligently. As in a small country like Gambia and Sierra Leone, we're planning to study it by talking to the statistical authorities and putting it as part of the household surveys to have a sense of what are those into investment. But since the 85 billion is just the one we count for, globally and at the World Bank, the working rule is that at least as much as the formal goes through informal, at least. That means you can count another 85 billion that is going through you giving cash to a friend, so, or through all of this informal money transfer, both the informal and the unregistered. When I did this study in 2019, I estimated that remittances to Africa was 200 billion of 85. That's the formal, informal, and there's one order that almost nobody ever counts. That's what I call remittances in kind. So my cousin would want to start a business and needs $5,000. 1,000 of that is to buy computers, and I send $5,000 cash, and I buy a computer. Send a computer. The computer is not counted, so there's no going through. And finally, the question of the threat. The biggest threat is if we do not convince big host countries to be part of it and make money from it. That's the biggest threat. That is, they don't provide the money from it. Second, if we don't convince members of the diaspora who send money remittances to make micro contributions. So to Almas's point, this is why mobilization of the diaspora advocacy is important, so that we are aware and we want to contribute. And this, our view, this for the micro contribution, is to take the social marketing to tell people, give them the reason why it is a good thing to give $1 to people they don't know, in addition to the $100 they are giving to friends, family, to the member states, we cannot mention names. We rarely can name names, but I say in Europe, one big country, one small country. In fact, in Europe, what we can say is what's in the public record, because we put this in evidence we gave the House of Lords here just before COVID. In fact, I gave evidence to the House of Lords 8 days before lockdown, and the response of the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office was that this is something that they can consider. The European Union Research Institute has also gone on record that they think this is interesting work looking. I can mention those because it's the public record, but the other resources we have, I can't mention. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. ADB, would you like to say? Angela, would you like to comment on any of these points?
Unfortunately, I couldn't hear the questions.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think it would be too complicated to try to. Okay, let's move on. If there are any other questions,
Thank you. My name is Nika Wilson. I'm the PhD for SOAS, the works on the project there. Thank you for the panel today. My question was around the concept of the diaspora and who we mean by that. So there is a lot of interest also among second generation Africans and second generation kind of investing back in the country or the continent, but not knowing necessarily how. So my question, based on your work, both engagement with the generation and half generation, and how can we encourage more of this engagement and second generation? Particularly because often there is a barrier around access to information, access to tools, access to technology, and on grassroots level or in the continent. So, yeah, the question is asking what has been the engagement of across generation around this, and how can we encourage it more? Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other? We take the lady first. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that presentation. I'm very interested as well to understand after. My name is Alice. I am associated on council at ARC, which is an African project. I am very interested as well to understand what we mean by Diaspora. And my second question is about confidence. Professor mentioned that we need to convince people to invest into those various things. And when we talk about investment, all guidelines, whether it's coming from OECD or EBRs, almost mentioned that's what project work needs to be. It needs to be very based on a very sound legal framework, and in order to make sure there is confidence to the people. And I'm very interested to know whether true. And you mentioned that you're working with Ghana, for example, to set up the law. And I'm interested to know whether this also includes helping the country to build a legal framework, which is actually sound enough and solid to bring confidence and make sure people invest in those types of things. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. And then we have one more, and then we can come back to the panel for the responses.
Thanks. Yes. Hello, my name is Sanju Malai. I'm a consultant to African Union in Ethiopia. Particularly, I work internationally as I'm a consultant to Africa CDC. And previously, I worked with a WHO on international migration and skilled, especially doctors and nurses. So, my interest is very, very straightforward. If I think while we do recognize that there are like 100 billion moving forward, it's like it's around 40 to 45 billion for sub-Saharan Africa, for around 1 billion people. So I think the potential is quite a lot. So first of all, part and foremost, we should have there should be a study on why people are insulated. Because right now the per capita remittance is around $3 per million. So 45 billion people and 45 billion so I think there is and we have to have operating on this as we press. India and China. Because India is quite a large social communities. The second thing that I wanted to say is that there should be a strategic plan for retention. Since we have to spend part of the money that is then a little bit of the money of ADFC. I think there should be a strategic plan for Africa for strategic plan for retention of the state. And we're trying to find is people what I mean. So been working on it for a very long time. And I have a very strong opinion on it.
Okay. So I think, one more, and that probably will be the last, this will give the opportunity to all the panelists to have the last one. Yeah, please go ahead.
I'm Jerry, and let's get on. So, my question, this is more trying to understand one. So, this is the Diaspora one. So, first of all, who's going to be the likely customer of this? And so, will it be, for instance, an individual, or is it more kind of government? So, if it's an individual competing product, then the likes of maybe investing in marketing partners or US treasuries. And if that is the case, you can say they then invest in the Diaspora one. So, if so, would there be, I would imagine, a certain risk premium that's on there? And if there is risk premium, when you're creating a fixed income product, how will we plan to service that bond essentially? Would it be then lending out to, for instance, companies in Africa at high interest rate, or investing that money to the equity side and then paying it back that way? And if it's on the equity side, would these bonds then carry a coupon, or would it be paid at the end, or would the mutual fund then accidentally or treat the equity side? So just based on the investment structuring, so my understanding might it be or has it been considered to look at it more from like a closed-ended fund perspective, whereas you would want to be both from a private public sense, and then off the success of the first round, further rounds you have to further rounds see the categories, and then you have to sustain as well is how it might work. So it's passed.
All right. Good. Well, thank you. I was actually going to ask Jibril, but I can see the Jibril would have the last one. So what I would suggest is that we go in the order in which we discuss it in the week. So start with our management left us and start. Then we'll go to Angela and then we'll continue with it. So this will be sort of responses to issues raised and your rapport. Then of course you come with what
Thank you very much for the questions. I think it's not going to be a leave a bit further. So I'll talk about, I'll answer two questions. One was with regards to the definition of the African diaspora. And then the other aspects I'll talk about is some of the tools work with regards to its diaspora bonds in Ghana. And it's at the proposal stage at the moment, so we want to engage with various stakeholders. But first, before I came here, I had a look at the definition of the African Union. would consider as the definition of the African diaspora. And the AU states that it consists of people of African origin living outside of the continent, irrespective of their citizenship, nationality, and who are willing to contribute to the development of the continent and to the building of the African Union. So that's their definition. We also know that the African Union also considers the African diaspora as the sixth region of the continent as well. And so in terms of the definition, it is quite broad. And with regards to kind of development partners, I'll leave Jibril to talk about how he would consider the African diaspora with regards to this context. But in terms of development partners such as abroad, we work with the wider African diaspora. We have done a number of different projects. So, for example, we had an exchange program. We had people of first, second, third generation, and some people who didn't know Africa whatsoever, but they wanted to understand. They wanted to, first of all, those people reconnect, some of them reconnect with their roots. Others wanted to potentially invest within Africa, but they wanted a soft landing. It's one of the projects that the board had was, and it was sponsored by VSA. It wasn't a program where we sent African members of the people from the African diaspora to countries such as Sierra Leone and Ghana, who work with entrepreneurs. And it was also about kind of skills transfer. So what are the skills that the African diaspora have learned in the global north, and what we can transfer back to the continent? But what we also found is that there were skills that we also kind of learned when we were on the ground, because there were specific techniques, knowledge that are intrinsic to the locality, that is also useful for the global north. And I think that's a concept that is not necessarily kind of shared. When we talk about the African diaspora returning, we always talk, some people talk about it from the context of the African diaspora returning to give back. But it's also about being open to see and what we can, learn and bring back to the global north. In terms of, a course work with regards to the diaspora bonds, proposal that we have at the moment, and we're speaking to a number of people, including construction firms that are based in Ghana. And as I mentioned, it's for the construction initially 400 units of student housing. And because of some of the kind of regulations on the land with regards to the diaspora bonds, what we considered is that the first one would be those people who are kind of impact investors. Those people who have the knowledge, capability, and skills to understand the investment. But the aim is to grow the bonds in 4 separate or additional kind of tranches. So it comes up to 50 million. But as I mentioned, part of the issue is if you're kind of reaching out to institutional investors, the sum that we're talking about, around 50 million, to us, to laymen, it may sound extremely, it's a extremely useful kind of investment. But to get the real kind of investors in, they really do want hundreds of millions, in terms of investment. So that's why I said that what Jibril and the African Union are doing in creating this structure will allow useful investment to things such as the diaspora bond, that African diaspora organisations are working with the private sector to facilitate a development need. And it's those small tranches of investment that there is a gap, really. And this is what of course hugely enough supports the work within this with regards to the African Union. So I hope that we can discuss in a break time as well. But I hope that answers a little bit of the
Great. No, thank you for that. Angela, last word from you on behalf of the African Union.
Okay, thank you so much. Nelly was gracious enough to type out some of the questions, and I heard Ndidi define the African diaspora. per the AU's definition. Then on the question of should there be a strategic plan for Africa to retain highly skilled, what will this involve? Actually, with the 5 legacy projects, I had 5 minutes, so I didn't want to actually take all your time. We have, as part of the 5 legacy projects, we have the professionals skills database that is currently on hold as a result of issues of confidentiality. But this is something that we look forward to taking up from there. We as well have the African Diaspora Volunteer Corps, and we started it on a small scale basis with a project whereby we are seeing to it currently with the African, with one of the other AU entities, which we are seeing to it that there is this historical African diaspora placement program, where we are seeing to it that we are able to gather some good data on the professionals in this historical diaspora placement program, which cuts across about 5 universities, and we are seeing how best to actually streamline them, get member states buy-in to organize a pilot come the middle part of this year to see how the rollout is, how best to actually get member states involved in giving them stipends, accommodation, and things like that for them to come and contribute towards Africa's development, or contribute what they deem their quota is. Then again, it would be good for you to, it would be good for me to make mention of the fact that as part of CEDO's mandate, we are to build the capacity of African Union member states for them to create viable or diaspora-friendly environments and frameworks to be able to sustainably engage their diaspora. And then the second is to as well build the capacity of diasporas using several lessons learned, good practice examples. So we have these diaspora networks, and AFOD has been one of the key stakeholders with hand-holding sessions to other continents, whereby we are able to exchange knowledge, and then they are able to learn from each other so that they are engaged. Now, with member states capacity building, we have a tool that we use currently, which is the Diaspora Engagement Self-Assessment Tool. It cuts across, it has a gauge, and it cuts across issues of political will, diaspora-friendly, and creating of diaspora-friendly environments, which of course will involve a business-friendly environment, such that a diaspora legacy project like the Diaspora Development Marketplace can yield, because it's also looking at innovation and entrepreneurship. That's the third that we are looking at after the ADFC. So there's so much outlined. We have outreach mobilization strategy. We have several pillars that we have gauged that member states are able to fill in, and then we are able to know where the gaps are, and then form or design tailor-made products to be able to then build their capacities as we go on. So these are some of the things we do to actually create some of these viable business environments, diaspora-friendly environments, and then to sensitize member states on how important the African diaspora is and how best they can engage them more sustainably. Thank you.
Thank you, too, for that, Angela. Tim.
So the good news here is when you build something a bit from scratch, and it's a blank piece of paper, obviously you're inspired by other institutions, other forms of funds and so forth. But there's an opportunity here. Say the opportunity is there'll be different potential sort of finance instruments, flavors of funds, something perhaps culturally tailored for particular markets, which becomes possible. You're not competing necessarily with all the other traditional financial institutions, but you're building something with a particular set of actors, but in their community, in this context, the actor community. So yes, if you come with funds or instruments that are familiar to many and traded right in the local scene, yes, but it's an opportunity here also to pilot some new type of instruments for funds and perhaps create new methods, right? And so I would say that that's the beauty of building an institution from scratch.
you're inspired, and also an opportunity to build a sandbox or two and try new interesting events.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So I'll focus on the questions that have not been answered. But just to say, regarding the definition of the diaspora, there is one exception, one limitation for it. The African Union was not considered a Nigerian living in Kenya as African diaspora. So for them, it's living outside. And throughout our approach as well, we want to keep that definition so as to maintain that continental sense and emerging community. Second, also to focus on the inflow of finances and monies outside of continental internal circulation. Although necessarily, as soon as you get these things, when you will have circulation, but we want to increase the very legal flow of finances that come to us. As I said, FDI we are about 1%, FDI we are about 3%. Global trade, I don't know the numbers, but 2%. So we have added 2-3% sort of club. It is a horrendous club to belong to. So that's why keeping that continental is important. Linked to that point, and to the very sort of observed point that if you look at it, we send so little to Africa. But to bear in mind that Africans, there are as many Africans as there are Indians. We forget this. So sometimes because we get attacked as being populated, Africa is the least populated continent. And in terms of finances, also we are not in a good place. The GDP of all of Africa, including the big countries, Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, all of us, were about the same as the United Kingdom in there. That's a fact. Germany's GDP is bigger than all of Africa. Yeah. So that's why it's almost like we have no option but to try everything that sounds reasonably good. It has to be tried because we're not in a good place. And in relation to that, success comes from being best of class. And being best of class in terms of transparency, good marketing, good customer service, all of that. It's not something you talk about, what you do that confirms the best of class. For the ADFC, that's what we say, and everything that would be done would be on that basis. And there are success stories. If you take ECOBAN or ADFC or African Development Bank, you know, it's not very cool to sing the songs of rich institutions. I'm never accused of being fool, so I can have a go. These institutions tick all of the boxes in terms of the credit rating they get and the sort of feedback they have. And there are African institutions set up and run by Africans. So for me, I don't spend a lot of time on the negative vibes of can you do it? Because we know we can do it. It's just whether we do it or not. But for this, it's going to be driven by the best of class. And regarding then when you raise the money, I forget to mention that the trust fund amongst the beneficiaries of this fund would be even the African Union itself. The African Union is a continental body. Most of its funding comes through grants and donations from outside of Africa. That is the situation. So if we have our own fund, our endowment of money, I would vote to cover the entire budget of CEDAW, which is the department directorate that deals with civil society. And I think that would be a good start. And on terms of the questions, just as I said that one would go for best of class in terms of all those structures, that would be the same. The fund would be a standard fund in terms of the regulatory part. It would be debt rather than the differentiation would also be that it would be for specific, as much as possible, for specific projects that are protected and say the money is going there. in our research, we found that the diaspora would like part of the marketing drive would be the driver would want to say that I helped build that market or I helped build that hotel. So that means the ticket should not be huge. We shouldn't be talking like people here billions of dollars. It should be tens of millions. That means you can go in and out very quickly, maybe 3 years ideally rather than 5 years. And also it will be specific and perhaps, if possible, infrastructure that people can say. And along those, my last observation as a closing and as an appeal to everyone, both in the room and online, is what should the stakeholders be doing next and what are the main sort of activities we will identify. Regarding the African member states, it would be that they start preparing for developing portfolio investment. Some have it, some in the process are started. So that's sort of preparation we think they should be doing because it's easier than for them to plug in with the ADFC and others. I'm working in 2 small countries, Gambia and Sierra Leone. Both countries have agreed with the principle of diaspora targeted bonds. That is, instead of waiting to issue their own bond, New York or London, their own treasury bills or bonds, they prepare for those to be marketed to their guys as a start in bringing new bonds of flow. Regarding the money transfer companies, it's to convince them for them to modify their apps. We have spoken with several, including one English, one medium, one specialist, and all say this is effectively, it's a 15-minute job for them to modify their app. But it's about getting the final endorsements for them and their trade associates, who I think are online to support that something. Then we come back to the partner countries, the countries that would say we would provide match funding. That again, there's a whole long list of arguments as to why they should do it. And the soundest one would be the space of sustainable financing. Their co-financing is not financing consumption, it's financing an endowment fund, which would hopefully contribute to the reduction from aid to dependence. For diaspora organizations is to raise awareness by sharing the link to the government and be part of ongoing consultations and discussion. And when the button is pressed and this is on, to contribute, to give the micro contributions and to convince others. We have 2 other institutional groups of partners, African Development Bank, Afrexim Bank, and a whole range of development finance institutions. And we expect we're talking to them to come with technical support and some of the, including the drafting of the treaty and the